I'm Sarah, 38 female. I live in a quiet suburban town with my husband, David, and our two children, 10-year-old Liam and 7-year-old Chloe. I work as a paralegal, a job that suits my detail-oriented and, let's be honest, slightly cynical nature. My life was ordered, predictable, and deeply happy until the person I should have been able to trust most in the world, my own sister, took a match to it all. She used the most precious thing in my life, my children, to build a throne of lies, and I was the last one to find out. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My sister Emily is 3 years younger than me. Growing up, that 3-year gap felt more like a canyon. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who colored inside the lines. Emily was the dreamer, the artist, the one who saw rules as gentle suggestions. Our parents called us the head and the heart, and for a long time it worked. I would help her with her homework. She would coax me out of my shell. We were different, but we were a unit. As we grew older, however, the differences that were once charming began to feel like fractures. I went to college, then law school to get my paralegal certificate, and met David my final year. He was grounded and brilliant, an IT consultant who could explain complex code and then pivot to discussing his favorite historical documentaries. We built a life that was stable and secure, founded on mutual respect and careful planning. We bought a modest house, planted a garden, and had our 2 wonderful children. My life wasn't flashy, but it was solid. It was real. Emily's path was different. She had a string of boyfriends, a series of jobs she'd grow bored with after a few months, and a perpetual sense of being on the cusp of some great, undiscovered destiny. When she finally met her husband, a kind but passive man who worked in retail management, we all breathed a sigh of relief. They had 2 kids of their own and settled into a life that, from the outside, looked a lot like mine. But there was always a current of chaos just beneath the surface. Emily was a stay-at-home mom, and while she adored her children, she was constantly complaining about money. Yet, every time I saw her, she'd have a new designer handbag or be talking about a weekend getaway they couldn't possibly afford. Her financial struggles were a recurring theme in our relationship. A few months before everything imploded, she called me in tears. Her husband's hours had been cut, she said, and they were going to be short on their car payment. It was a familiar story. "I just need a few hundred, Sarah," she'd sniffled over the phone. "I'm so embarrassed to even ask. I'll pay you back on the first, I swear." I knew, with the certainty of years of experience, that I would likely never see that money again. But she was my sister. So I sent it, along with a gentle suggestion that they look into creating a budget. I could even help them set one up. The suggestion was met with a frosty silence before she quickly changed the subject. The check was cashed the next day. This was the rhythm of our relationship. Her crisis, my solution, her resentment, and my quiet resignation. Despite the financial friction, I tried to keep our families close for the sake of the kids. Our children were cousins, after all, and I wanted them to have the kind of bond that Emily and I once shared. I created a private social media page for our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, where we could share photos and updates without having to post them for the whole world to see. It felt like a safe, protected space. I'd post pictures of Liam's soccer games and Chloe's dance recitals. I shared their school photos, their silly faces on vacation, and the Mother's Day cards they made me. Emily was always the first to comment. "My beautiful niece, look at that smile," she'd write under a picture of Chloe. "Liam is getting so tall, such a handsome young man." Her comments were always effusive, filled with hearts and loving emojis. I saw it as a sign that, despite our differences, the core of our sisterly bond was still there. She loved my children, and I loved hers. That, I thought, was the foundation we could always stand on. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. There was a desperation that flickered in her eyes during our last family dinner. While I was talking about a promotion David had gotten at work, I saw her smile tighten at the edges. She made a joke about how it must be nice to not have to check price tags at the grocery store, a comment that landed with a thud in the middle of the cheerful conversation. At the time, I brushed it off as just another one of Emily's passive-aggressive digs, born of her own insecurities. I pitied her. I felt a pang of guilt foe. Are my own contentment, a feeling she was always very good at invoking in me. The last time I saw her before my world came crashing down was at a cousin's barbecue. Chloe had been showing off her new cartwheel, her face beaming with pride each time she landed it. Emily had filmed it on her phone, cheering louder than anyone. "I have to send this to Grandma," she'd exclaimed, giving Chloe a big hug. "You are such a little star." I remember smiling, thinking that maybe things were getting better. Maybe she was finally finding her own happiness and letting go of the jealousy that had poisoned so much of our adult relationship. That was the memory that would haunt me the most. The image of my sister, hugging my daughter, her phone in her hand, her mind already spinning a web of deceit that would place my innocent child at its very center. The setup wasn't a single event. It was 1,000 tiny moments of trust, a lifetime of sisterhood, and the deeply ingrained belief that family, above all else, was a safe harbor. I had no idea I was an actor in a play she was scripting, and the final act was destined to destroy me. The first ripple in the water was so small I barely noticed it. It was a phone call from my great-aunt Susan, a woman known more for her gossip than her sentimentality. She called on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the thick of preparing a discovery response for a big case at work. "Sarah, honey, I was just thinking about you all," she began, her voice syrupy with a strange kind of pity. "I just want you to know we're all praying for you, especially for little Chloe. She's such a fighter." I paused, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Thanks, Aunt Susan, that's very sweet of you, but is everything okay?" "Oh, she said evasively. "You just hang in there, you're a strong woman." And then she was gone, leaving me in a state of bewilderment. A fighter? I chalked it up to my aunt being her usual dramatic self. Maybe she'd heard Chloe had a cold and had blown it out of proportion. But then, a few days later, a card arrived in the mail from my grandmother. Inside was a check for $200. The note, written in her shaky, familiar script, read, "A little something to help with the expenses. Don't you worry about a thing. Just focus on that precious girl." This time, a knot of genuine anxiety formed in my stomach. Expenses for what? I immediately called my grandmother. "Gram, thank you so much for the card, but I'm a little confused. What expenses are you talking about?" She sounded flustered. "Oh, dear. Emily told me not to bring it up with you. She said you were overwhelmed and didn't want to talk about it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything." "Talk about what, Gram?" I pressed, my voice starting to rise. "What is going on?" "Just Chloe S. You know her treatments," she whispered, as if the words themselves were a secret. My blood ran cold. "Treatments? Gram, Chloe is perfectly fine. She was at a friend's birthday party all afternoon. She doesn't have any treatments." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Oh," my grandmother said, sounding utterly confused. "Oh I must have misunderstood. You forget things at my age. Just use the money for a nice family dinner then. It was lovely talking to you, dear." She hung up before I could ask another question. I stood in my kitchen, my heart pounding. What was happening? Why was my sister telling people my daughter needed treatments? I called Emily immediately. She answered on the second ring, her voice a little too bright, a little too cheerful. "Hey sis, what's up?" I decided to play dumb to see what she would say. "Hey, I just had the weirdest call with Gram. She seemed to think Chloe was sick or something." Emily laughed, a high, tinkling sound that suddenly sounded incredibly fake. "Oh my gosh, you know how she gets. She probably heard Chloe had the sniffles and turned it into pneumonia. Don't worry about it. She's just being a classic grandma." Her explanation was plausible. It was exactly the kind of thing my grandmother might do. But it didn't explain my Aunt Susan's call, and it didn't explain the deep, gut-wrenching feeling that I was being lied to. Still, I let it go. What was the alternative? That my sister was intentionally spreading rumors about my daughter's health. The idea was so monstrous, so utterly unthinkable, that my brain refused to even entertain it. Over the next 2 weeks, the strange interactions continued to pile up. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in a year sent me a text message with a string of prayer emojis. My own mother started acting skittish during our daily phone calls. When I'd ask about her day, she would give me one-word answers, and when I'd talk about the kids, she'd make a choked sound before quickly changing the subject. I confronted my mom about it. "Mom, you're being weird. Is something going on that I don't know about?" "No, sweetheart, thing's fine," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "I've just been a little tired lately." The feeling of being gaslit by my own family was maddening. I felt like I was living in a different reality from everyone else, a world where secret conversations were happening just out of my earshot. David could see the toll it was taking on me. I was distracted, irritable, and constantly checking my phone, as if the answer would magically appear in a notification. "Maybe you should just sit down with Emily and your mom and hash this out," he suggested one evening as I paced the living room. "Tell them the weird calls are freaking you out and you want to know what's being said." I knew he was right, but I dreaded it. A confrontation with Emily was always a theatrical affair. She would cry, she would deflect, she would somehow twist the situation around until I was the one apologizing. I was exhausted just thinking about it. The betrayal, I now realize, wasn't a single act. It was this slow, creeping poison. It was the calculated campaign of whispers and misinformation she had launched within our family, isolating me with their pity and concern while I remained completely in the dark. She was testing the waters, seeing how far she could push the narrative before it got back to me. Each vague comment and worried phone call was a thread in the web she was weaving. She was leveraging the love and trust of our family, turning their genuine care into a tool for her own gain. And the most painful part is that she used me, my supposed emotional fragility, as the excuse for their secrecy. "Don't tell Sarah," she'd said. "She's not handling it well." She was painting me as an unstable mother, unable to cope with a crisis that didn't even exist, all while positioning herself as the brave, supportive sister holding everything together. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, and I was its unwitting centerpiece. The email that changed everything arrived on a Thursday morning. I was at my desk, sipping my second cup of coffee and preparing for a client meeting. My work was my sanctuary, a place of logic and order that felt increasingly necessary as my family life grew more confusing. I saw the notification pop up on my screen. The sender was my cousin Mark. Mark was one of the good ones. A high school history teacher, he was quiet, observant, and had a no-nonsense attitude that I always appreciated. We weren't incredibly close, but there was a mutual respect there. The subject line of the email was simple: "Thinking of you." I opened it, expecting a simple message of hello. Instead, my eyes fell on a short, hesitant paragraph. "Sarah, I really hope I'm wrong about this, and I'm sorry if this causes any distress, but my wife and I saw this and it just didn't feel right." Emily shared it on her personal page, and a friend of my wife, S., who isn't in our private family group, saw it and asked her about it. "We both thought it was strange Dee never mentioned anything so serious to us directly. Again, I'm so sorry if this is a huge misunderstanding, but I felt you had to know." Below the text was a single blue link. My hand trembled as I moved the mouse to hover over it. My stomach churned with a toxic mix of dread and a desperate need to know. What had Emily shared? What was so serious? 100 terrible scenarios flashed through my mind, but none of them came close to the reality I was about to face. I took a deep breath, clicked the link, and watched my entire world detonate. The web page loaded. It was a GoFundMe campaign. The title in big, bold letters read, "Help Chloe's Fight for Life." For a moment, my brain couldn't process it. It was like reading a sentence in a language I didn't understand. Then I saw the picture. It was a photo I had taken myself just a month ago on a family trip to the beach. My 7-year-old daughter, Chloe, was sitting on the sand, laughing, her hair messy from the wind, the sun glinting in her eyes. She looked vibrant, healthy, and full of life. But here, on this page, her joyful image was being used as a symbol of tragedy. My eyes scanned the text below, my horror growing with every word. The campaign organizer was listed as her loving aunt, Emily. The description was a work of devastating fiction, a novel of lies written about my child. Our brave little Chloe, it began, was recently diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of neuroblastoma. Our family has been shattered by this diagnosis. The doctors have recommended an experimental treatment protocol that offers a glimmer of hope, but of course, it is not covered by insurance. The costs are astronomical, and her parents, Sarah and David, are struggling to keep their heads above water while trying to stay strong for their daughter. We are humbly asking for your help. Any amount, big or small, will go directly towards Chloe's medical bills and give this sweet girl a fighting chance to live the long, happy life she deserves. Thank you for your prayers and support. Neuroblastoma. She had actually named a specific, terrifying childhood cancer. She had written about a struggle that wasn't real, about bills that didn't exist, about a pain my family was not enduring. It was so detailed, so filled with emotional, manipulative language. It was disgustingly brilliant. I scrolled down, my body numb with shock. There were more pictures. A photo of Liam with his arm around Chloe, which I had captioned, "My sweet protectors," was now presented as a brave older brother supporting his sick sister. A picture of Chloe sleeping peacefully in her bed was framed as an image of her resting after a grueling, non-existent treatment. These were my private moments, my memories, stolen from our family page and twisted into fundraising props. Then I saw the donor list. It was a roll call of my life. My aunts, my uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, my parents, my own grandmother. The donations ranged from $50 to $1,000. The total at the top of the page was staggering, $8,450. Next to each donation was a comment. Sending all our love and prayers to brave Chloe. Stay strong, Sarah and David. You have a huge community behind you. Emily, thank you for setting this up. You are such a wonderful sister and aunt. That last one broke me. I felt a wave of nausea so powerful I had to physically clamp my hand over my mouth. I stumbled out of my office and into the hallway, making it to the ladies' room just in time to be sick. I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The person looking back was a stranger, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of rage and profound heartbreak that I had never seen before. This wasn't just a lie. This was a violation of the deepest kind. My sister had taken the image of my healthy, happy child and sold it to our family for sympathy and cash. She had exploited their love, my privacy, and Chloe's very identity. She had turned my daughter into a fictional patient, a pawn in her sick, fraudulent game. I walked back to my desk like a zombie. I called David. When he answered, I couldn't form words. All that came out was a choked sob. "Sarah, honey, what's wrong? What happened?" I took a shaky breath and managed to whisper 4 words. "It's Emily and Chloe." I forwarded him the link. The silence on his end of the line was heavier than any words could have been. Then I heard him exhale, a sharp, angry sound. "I'm coming to get you," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Don't do anything, don't call anyone, just wait for me, I'm on my way." I closed my laptop. The image of Chloe's smiling face on that fraudulent page burned into my memory. The initial shock was beginning to recede, replaced by something else, something cold and hard and sharp. It was the feeling of a paralegal looking at a mountain of evidence. The feeling of a mother whose child had just been threatened. It was pure, unadulterated rage. David arrived at my office within 20 minutes. He found me sitting at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen. I hadn't moved. The shock had frozen me in place, but beneath the ice, a fire was starting to burn. When he put his hand on my shoulder, I finally looked up at him. The fury in his eyes mirrored my own. He didn't need to say anything. We were in complete lockstep. "Let's go home," he said softly, and I allowed him to lead me out of the building. My boss saw my face as we left and simply nodded, telling me to take all the time I needed. The car ride home was silent. My mind, which had been a whirlwind of chaotic emotion, was beginning to clear. The years I had spent organizing case files, documenting evidence, and preparing legal arguments took over. The grief was still there, a heavy weight in my chest, but it was now coupled with a cold, clear sense of purpose. My sister had committed a crime, not just a moral crime against our family, but a literal one, fraud. And I, a paralegal, was uniquely equipped to handle it. As soon as we walked through the door of our house, the investigation began. We sat down at the dining room table, our laptops open. "First things first," I said, my voice steady for the first time since I'd opened the email. "We document everything, before she has a chance to take it down." We started with the GoFundMe page. We took screenshots of the entire campaign. The title, the fabricated story, the photos of my children, the goal amount, the current total, the list of donors, and every single comment. We saved the page as a PDF and archived the URL. David, with his IT background, made multiple backups, storing them on a secure cloud drive and a separate physical hard drive. We were creating an evidence locker. Next, I called Mark. I needed to know everything he knew. I put the phone on speaker so David could listen. "Mark, it's Sarah. I got your email. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't sent it." "I'm so sorry, Sarah," He said, his voice full of genuine remorse. "We just had this horrible feeling about it. Emily has been posting about it nonstop on her private social media, but every time I asked her for a specific update, she'd get vague and say the doctors were trying new things and that you were too devastated to talk. It was her secrecy that made us suspicious." "Did she ask you for money directly?" I asked. "No, she just let the campaign do the talking. She'd post these dramatic updates, like holding my niece's hand today, praying for a miracle. It was sickening." He gave me the names of a few other relatives who had expressed confusion. We now had potential witnesses. After I hung up with Mark, the next step was the one I dreaded most, calling our parents. I had to know what Emily had told them. I dialed my mom's number, my stomach in knots. She answered with that same weary, pitying tone she'd been using for weeks. "Mom," I said, my voice firm, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Chloe is not sick. She has never been sick. There is no neuroblastoma. There are no treatments." There was a stunned silence on the other end. What are you talking about, Sarah?" Emily told us. "Mom, Emily has been lying to you. She created a GoFundMe page using pictures of Chloe and Liam to collect money from the entire family." I heard a sharp intake of breath, then my father's voice in the background. "What's going on?" My mother explained what I'd said, her voice trembling. I could hear my dad swearing under his breath. "She called us a month ago," my mom finally said, her voice cracking. She was sobbing, hysterical. "She told us about the diagnosis and made us promise not to call you. She said you were on the verge of a complete breakdown and that hearing our grief on top of your own would push you over the edge. She said she was managing everything, being the strong one for the family. We thought we were protecting you." The manipulation was so much deeper than I had imagined. She hadn't just lied. She had poisoned my relationship with my own parents, using their love for me as a weapon to ensure their silence. My father got on the phone, his voice shaking with rage. "Sarah, I am so sorry. We should have known. We should have called you. We sent her $2,000. The calls to other relatives followed a similar pattern. Each conversation was a fresh wave of pain, but also another piece of evidence. An aunt who said Emily had called her, describing in fake detail a non-existent visit to a children's oncology ward. An uncle who recounted how Emily had tearfully told him they might lose their house trying to pay for these treatments. She had tailored her lies to each person, playing on their specific sympathies. While I was making these agonizing calls, David was doing his own research. He pulled up GoFundMe's terms of service and their fraud reporting policies. He looked up state and federal statutes on wire fraud. Because she used the internet to solicit funds across state lines, this could be a federal issue, he said, pointing to his screen. This isn't just a family squabble. It's a serious crime. By the end of the day, we had a comprehensive file. We had screenshots, saved web pages, a list of every donor, and detailed notes from my conversations with our parents and Mark. The initial, paralyzing shock had been replaced by a cold, methodical resolve. I felt like I was preparing for the biggest case of my life, and the stakes couldn't be higher. This wasn't about the money. I knew we could ask GoFundMe to refund the donors. This was about the violation. It was about justice for my daughter, who had been turned into a public spectacle without her knowledge or consent. That evening, after we had tucked our blissfully unaware children into bed, I sat at the table and looked at the mountain of evidence we had compiled. It was a monument to my sister's depravity. The question was no longer what had happened, but what we were going to do about it. The family protector in me wanted to handle it quietly, to minimize the drama. But the paralegal in me knew that what Emily had done required a formal, official response. She had built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and I was about to become the gust of wind that blew it all down. The following day, David and I sat down to map out our strategy. The evidence was compiled and secured. The initial shock had passed, leaving a landscape of grim determination. Now, we had to decide on a course of action. I drew on my professional experience, treating it like a legal case, laying out the options on a notepad as if preparing for a meeting with a client. Option 1, I began, my voice flat and businesslike, is the private approach. We confront Emily directly. We show her our evidence, demand she take down the campaign, return every cent, and then we cut her out of our lives completely. No legal action, no public family announcement. D. Avid considered it for a moment. Pros, it contains the fallout. It avoids a massive public family implosion. Cons, there are no real consequences for her beyond losing us. She could twist the story to other family members, paint us as the villains. And honestly, I don't trust her to return the money without a fight. He was right. Emily was a master of narrative control. If we handled this privately, she would undoubtedly spin a tale of a misunderstanding or claim we were overreacting. She would make herself the victim. That wasn't justice. It was just a different version of her getting away with it. Okay, I said, drawing a line through option 1. Option 2, the family exposure. We don't go to the authorities, but we don't stay silent either. We draft a clear, factual email to everyone who donated and the wider family. We lay out the truth, provide the screenshots as proof, and let the family handle the consequences. We expose her lies to the very people she manipulated. That's better, David said, nodding. The truth comes out. She can't spin it because we have the proof. The social consequences would be huge for her. But, he added, it still feels incomplete. She committed a crime. A real one. Shouldn't there be a real-world consequence for that? What's to stop her from doing something similar to someone else in the future if all she gets is shunned by the family? That brought me to the final, most severe option. Option 3, the official route. We report her. We file a fraud report with GoFundMe. We file a report with the Internet Crime Complaint Center, the IC3. We contact local law enforcement. We treat this exactly for what it is, a criminal act. We pursue legal justice, and we let the chips fall where they may. The weight of that option hung in the air between us. This wasn't just an abstract legal concept. This was my sister, my parents' daughter, the aunt to my children. Pursuing this path could mean she would have a criminal record. It could mean fines, probation, or, however unlikely, even jail time. It would detonate a bomb in the center of our family from which we might never recover. I thought about Chloe. I pictured her innocent, smiling face on that webpage, exploited for profit. I thought about the violation of her privacy, the theft of her image. This wasn't a simple case of borrowing money and not paying it back. This was a deep, calculated act of emotional and psychological predation against a child. My child. My feelings for her as a sister are dead, I said, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. She killed them. All that's left is my duty as a mother. And as a mother, I have to protect my kids. This can't just be swept under the rug. She needs to understand that there are profound, unbreakable lines you do not cross. We go with option 3. David reached across the table and took my hand. I'm with you 100%, but we need to be smart about it. We can combine elements of 2 and 3. A multi-pronged attack. The final plan began to take shape. each step deliberate and calculated. Step 1, the official reports. I would handle this personally. I would use my paralegal skills to draft a formal, detailed fraud report for GoFundMe, citing their specific terms of service violations. I would then compile a similar package, complete with our evidence file, for the IC3. The language would be dispassionate, factual, and legally precise. Emotion would be our enemy here. The evidence was our strength. Step 2, preparing the family. We couldn't just drop this bomb without warning our closest allies. I would call my parents and Mark first. I would walk them through our decision to pursue legal action so they wouldn't be blindsided by the fallout. Their support would be crucial in the coming storm. Step 3, the revelation. After the official reports were filed, I would draft an email to the entire list of donors and our extended family. Like the fraud reports, it would be factual and unemotional. It would state simply what Emily had done, that Chloe was and always had been perfectly healthy, and that we had turned the matter over to the proper authorities. I would attach a few key screenshots: the campaign title, the fabricated story, and the list of family donors. The evidence would speak for itself. The email would end with a clear boundary. We would be taking a step back from family gatherings to process and heal, and we would not be discussing the matter further. Step 4, the blockade. The moment that email was sent, David and I would block Emily on our phones, email, and all social media platforms. We would also block anyone we knew would act as her flying monkey, trying to guilt or manipulate us on her behalf. We would not engage. We would not argue. We would present the truth and then retreat to a position of strength, letting the consequences unfold without our direct involvement. The plan was cold and it was ruthless. It felt less like a wily matter and more like a military operation. But Emily had declared war on my family, on my child. This was my response. There would be no tearful confrontation, no screaming match where she could deploy her usual tactics of emotional manipulation. My confrontation would be silent, digital, and backed by the full weight of the law. I was done feeling hurt. I was ready to fight back. On Saturday morning, with the kids happily engrossed in cartoons downstairs, David and I initiated the plan. The house was quiet, giving the moment a surreal sense of calm before the storm. I sat at my laptop, my fingers poised over the keyboard. First, I went to the GoFundMe website. I navigated to their Trust and Safety section and began the fraud reporting process. I uploaded the screenshots, the archived web pages, and the PDF of the campaign. In the description box, I didn't write as a heartbroken sister. I wrote as a paralegal. I laid out the facts in a numbered list: the identity of the campaign organizer, her relationship to my child, the fabricated medical diagnosis, the use of stolen photographs, and the list of donors who were solicited under false pretenses. I submitted it, and a small pop-up confirmed the report had been received. One down. Next was the IC3 report. This was more detailed, a formal complaint to federal authorities. I meticulously filled out every field, cross-referencing my notes to ensure every detail was accurate. The names, the dates, the amounts. I attached our evidence file, a neat digital package of my sister's crimes. When I clicked the final Submit button, I felt a profound sense of finality. This was it. I had officially crossed the Rubicon. There was no going back. Step 2 was the phone call to my parents. I put them on speaker. "Mom, Dad," I started, "I'm calling to let you know what we've decided to do. We've just filed official fraud reports against Emily with GoFundMe and the IC3. My mother gasped. My father was silent for a long moment, then said, "Good, she deserves it." "It's going to get very messy," I warned them. "In a few minutes, I'm sending an email to the whole family explaining everything. I wanted you to hear it from me first. The phones are going to start ringing. People are going to be shocked and angry. Some might even try to defend her." "Let them try," my father grumbled. "Anyone who defends this isn't family. We support you, Sarah, whatever you need." My mother was crying softly. I just can't believe she would do this, my own daughter. "I know, Mom," I said gently. "But right now, I have to be a mother first. I'll talk to you both tomorrow." After hanging up, I took a deep breath and opened the email draft I had spent hours perfecting. It was a masterpiece of cold, hard fact. Subject: important information regarding Emily's fundraiser for Chloe. Dear family, it has come to our attention that my sister, Emily, created a GoFundMe campaign to solicit donations for our daughter, Chloe. This email is to inform you that the information in that campaign is completely false. Chloe is, and always has been, a perfectly healthy 7-year-old girl. She does not have neuroblastoma or any other illness. The medical crisis described in the fundraiser was entirely fabricated by Emily. The photographs used were taken from our private family social media page without our knowledge or consent and were used to create a false narrative for financial gain. We have already filed official fraud reports with GoFundMe and the relevant legal authorities. We have attached screenshots of the campaign for your reference. We kindly ask that you do not contact us for further details, as this is now a legal matter. Our family needs time and space to process this profound betrayal. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Sarah and David. I attached the 3 most damning pieces of evidence: the main campaign page, the list of their names as donors, and one of Emily's manipulative updates. I read it over one last time. It was perfect, impersonal, irrefutable, and final. I took David's hand, and together we clicked send. The digital silence lasted for exactly 90 seconds. Then my phone began to vibrate, and it didn't stop. A cascade of texts and calls flooded in. David's phone started buzzing too. We looked at each other, and without a word, we both switched our phones to silent and put them face down on the counter. Step 4, the blockade. I went to my contacts and blocked Emily's number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I blocked a couple of cousins who were known for being her biggest apologists. It was a swift, clean amputation. A few hours later, curiosity got the better of me. I tentatively checked my phone. I had dozens of texts from shocked and appalled relatives, offering support and expressing their fury at Emily. But it was the voicemail notification from a blocked number that I knew was her. I motioned for David to listen with me and pressed P. Delay. Emily's voice filled the room, a frantic, tear-soaked torrent of words. Sarah, pick up the phone. I can't believe you did this. You've ruined my life. It was all just a big misunderstanding. I was going to give the money back. How could you be so cruel to your own sister? After everything I do for this family, you have no idea what it's like for me, the pressure I'm under. You think you're so perfect with your perfect job and your perfect husband. You did this to me. There it was, not a hint of remorse, not a single word of apology. Only accusations, gaslighting, and the classic victim narrative. Listening to it, any lingering shred of doubt I had about my decision evaporated. This wasn't a confrontation of 2 people screaming at each other. My confrontation had been the email. It had been the fraud report. It was the undeniable truth, delivered with precision and without emotion, leaving her nothing to fight against but the consequences of her own actions. The real confrontation was now between Emily and the 30-odd family members, whose trust she had incinerated for cash. And that was a battle she would have to fight alone. The days following the email, as David and I came to call it, were chaotic for everyone but us. We had built a fortress of silence, and from within its walls, we watched the shockwaves ripple through our family. My parents acted as our gatekeepers, fielding the frantic calls and confirming the story was true. They told us the family was split into 3 camps: the vast majority who were horrified and supportive of us, a small, predictable group who were trying to both sides the issue, murmuring about forgiveness and how family is family, and Emily, who was now completely isolated. GoFundMe's response was swift. Within 48 hours, their trust and safety team had frozen the campaign and sent me an email confirming their investigation had found clear evidence of fraud. They began the process of automatically refunding every single donation. That was the first public consequence, a clear validation that we had been telling the truth. The family fallout was brutal. My father, a man of few words but deep principles, called a meeting with his siblings and laid down the law. He told them that anyone who excused Emily's behavior or pressured Sarah for a reconciliation would be choosing a side, and it wouldn't be his. That decisive action quelled much of the let's just forgive and forget chatter. Emily had always relied on the family's aversion to conflict to get away with things, but by making the betrayal so monstrous, she had finally crossed a line that even the most conflict-averse relatives couldn't ignore. The legal process, as I knew it would, moved at a glacial pace. A few weeks after my IC3 report, we were contacted by a detective from the local police department's cybercrime unit. I spent 2 hours on the phone with her, walking her through the evidence. She was professional and empathetic, and she confirmed that, given the amount of money and the number of people defrauded, they were taking it very seriously. Months crawled by. We adjusted to a new normal. We no longer posted on the family's social media page, which had become a digital ghost town. Our interactions were with a smaller, more trusted circle of relatives. In a strange way, the betrayal had been a clarifying event, burning away the superficial connections and leaving only the ones that were real and strong. Mark and his wife became closer to us than ever, our bond forged in the fires of this crisis. Eventually, Emily was formally charged with wire fraud. Given that it was a first offense and the money had been returned by GoFundMe, she avoided jail time. Her punishment came in the form of a plea bargain, 5 years of probation, a hefty fine, and court-ordered community service and psychological counseling. She would also have a permanent criminal record, a stain that would follow her for the rest of her life. We heard through the family grapevine that her husband, who claimed to have known nothing about the scheme, had separated from her. He was mortified and had taken their kids to live with his parents. Emily was left alone, a pariah in her own family, her reputation destroyed. For me, healing has been a long and complicated process. There was no triumphant feeling of victory, only a profound and weary sadness. I grieved the loss of my sister, not the person she had become, but the sister she once was, the little girl I had grown up with. I had to accept that that person was gone forever. I enrolled myself in therapy to process the complex emotions of grief and rage. It helped me understand that my response was not an act of revenge, but an act of protection. My primary responsibility was not to my sister, but to my children. I had taught them that actions have consequences, and I had modeled what it means to stand up for yourself, even when it's the hardest thing in the world to do. David and I became more vigilant about our children's digital footprint. We had long conversations with Liam and Chloe in age-appropriate terms about privacy and the importance of knowing who can see the pictures we share. The internet was no longer just a place for fun and connection. It was a place that required caution and awareness. Today, my life is quiet again. The drama has faded, replaced by a hard-won peace. My relationship with my parents is stronger than ever, rebuilt on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. I look at my children, so full of life and completely untouched by the darkness that briefly surrounded them, and I know I made the right choice. I lost a sister, but in doing so, I protected my family and discovered a strength within myself I never knew I possessed. I learned that sometimes, the most loving thing a family can do is not to forgive a wound, but to cauterize it to stop the poison from spreading any further. I closed the case on my sister, and in doing so, I was finally able to start writing a new chapter for myself.